today's hand history, I am playing the $10,000 buy-in World Poker Tour Championship. This was in mid-December, and they set a guaranteed of 15 million, which was the largest guaranteed live tournament ever, and they destroyed that guarantee. Anyways, today's hand, it was big blind 1200, 90k stack. I get dealt ace queen of diamonds in mid position 2. Table around me is pretty much all professionals. Obviously this hand here is a pretty easy raise, but we're going to look at quick what our raising range should look like in theory and maybe what types of adjustments I'm going to be making here. So mid position 2, as you can see here, we're raising about 23% of hands, just shy. And I'm actually going to be raising pretty close to this just because I have such a pro heavy table. But the hands that I'm actually going to be adjusting a tiny bit here, all of these like partial raises here, ace 9, king 10, queen 10, jack 10 offsuit, all of these hands, I'm just pure folding those. I'm going to pure fold this king 5 suited, queen 8 suited. Now deuces, 3s, and 4s, which are partial folds, I'm actually going to raise those in full. 7, 8 suited, 6, 7 suited, 6, 5 suited, I'm going to raise those in full. While I am playing a little bit tighter than this 23% essentially, I'm more like 21.5%, so I'm pretty close to theory, but a tiny bit tighter. The thing to know about GTO is anytime there are partial decisions, because they are essentially break even at best, and having them in is as much about getting good board coverage and those types of things, sticking exactly to it really isn't super important. What you should do though is have a good idea as to what GTO looks like, why it looks like that, and then build your game a little bit around that based off of who you're playing versus what stage of the tournament you're at, all those other factors. Okay, so that's how I'm going to be approaching this spot. Anyways, I raise my ace queen of diamonds to 3k from mid position 2, and the big blind calls. Pot size now is 7.8k, and the flop is the 10 of spades, the 8 of spades, and the deuce of hearts. He checks to me. So we're going to look at this board texture quick. With that flop of the 10 of spades, the 8 of spades, and the deuce of hearts, obviously he's going to check to me. This is a board texture that he is never supposed to lead. Every pro is just going to check here. I have some pretty interesting decisions though. This is a board texture that certainly can hit him pretty hard, and is a board texture that is very dynamic and is also very wet. Dynamic being that the best hand possible changes on a lot of cards in the deck. So the best hand possible here changes on deuces, spades, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, queens, kings, aces. Or best hand possible changes on a lot of cards in the deck. The only cards it does not are the 3, 4s, and 5s non-spades. So this is a very dynamic board texture. And it's wet because it connects very well with the big blind's defense range. So, big blind can very easily they can have 10-8. They can have 10 deuce suited. They could have 8 deuce suited. They could have pocket deuces. They could have pocket 8s. They could technically have pocket 10s. They could have ace 10. So they can have a lot of different really strong hands. Knowing that builds how my approach is going to be here. So being a very dynamic board texture that interacts very well with the big blind's range, if I'm going to bet here, I'm generally going to want to choose larger sizes, especially because of how deep effective we are here. I probably am largely going 2/3 pot, and I'm probably not checking back super often here, maybe 15-20% of the time. And it looks like I check back about 20% of the time. Oh, I do get to go pot here a little bit more often than what I was expecting to. Interesting. They check to me, and I bet 5k into a pot size of 7.8k. Why am I going 5k? Well, 2/3 pot size. In game, I thought it would give me a lot of flexibility on turn cards. I'm going to be barreling a lot, keeps the range a little bit looser. I did know in game that I could probably go pot occasionally, but I just figured a 2/3 pot size would accomplish pretty much all the things that a pot size would, and give me a little bit more flexibility in my decisions on future streets. And he calls. And the turn is the ace of hearts, bringing a backdoor flush draw. It's a very, very, very wonderful card because it not only does it give me that top pair, but it also adds a lot of draws to his range. So now I get to bet really, really, really big, that I get to chase down all of his different straight draws, his different flush draws, his pairs and flush draws. So I get to go really, really, really big here. And then when he does call on a lot of rivers, I get to check back and I get to win a very, very big pot. Occasionally, yes, I do get sucked out on, and that's not great, but being able to turn top pair and a top pair in a situation that I get to go very large for value and I happen to have a value hand, that is a great, great, great situation. Anyways, they check to me, and I get to just go really big. In fact, actually in game, I potted it, which if we look at theory here, we're going to see that it should go 2/3 pot or pot almost like the vast majority of the time, or check it back. Why do I know that it's going to go 2/3 pot or pot almost always, which it essentially does, or check back, is good general rule of thumb is on the turn and on the river, in position, you either bet really big or check. Why? Well, on the turn, if you check back, hey, you get to see the river. That's great. That's wonderful. So the hands that want to bet the turn are either bluffs or hands that are strong enough to bet call raises, or at least are pushing really, really, really good equity. Even if they're not necessarily strong enough to bet call raise, they're just pushing really, really, really good value. So my entire range that bets the turn isn't like betting or snap folding, but a good portion of it is. In fact, this is actually one of the types of hands where I'm going really, really big, and when I do get check raised, while it does suck and I'm probably supposed to call, in game I'm probably actually folding. Most of the time when I'm betting the turn and I'm going this big, I have like an easy stack off or an easy call or very easy fold. And that's just how theory approaches a lot of these types of spots in position. And in position on the river, you check, you just end the hand and get showdown. So it really doesn't want to bet those middling hands that could get check blown off. So because of that, when you're in position, turns and rivers, you need to be careful with what you're betting. And when you are betting, you should generally be betting larger sizes for the most part, especially on these really dynamic board textures. So they check and I go pot. And if we look at my exact combo here, ace queen of diamonds, there's a very small percentage here that it goes pot, 2.5%. It does go pot size here. So I ended up doing that, which I don't think their range changes too much between me going 2/3 or me potting. I think this is a pretty common spot where people are going to bet very large, just in general here. So a pot size bet shouldn't be seen as something that's like absurd or ridiculous or unusual or weird or anything like that. They should just view it as a typical large size. And the reason why having reasonable value here is pretty important is because I'm also going to be expected to have reasonable bluffs, which is very, 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 very important in terms of getting called by weaker hands. So I pot and they call. And the river is the queen of spades. I river top 2 pair and he checks. On this river, while there aren't necessarily a ton of hands that I lose to now, I still lose to enough. I lose to the main culprit being ace X of spades, really is like the main type of hand that I lose to, as well as those like really, I honestly just want to say it's king jack of hearts, 9 jack of hearts, ace X of spades, and maybe a couple king X of spade combos, and then I beat everything else. And while I do beat a lot of their range, what hands do I beat that is willing to call a bet? And I couldn't really think of many. They're all these like different hero calls, and in a spot like this where, yeah, they cover me, but it's just like, it's not a great spot for me to have a ton of bluffs necessarily. And the possibility of them having a better hand is just, it's high enough, especially compared to the hands that can call. I made a very nitty check back. And if we see what we're supposed to do in game, I am just supposed to jam this. This ace queen here, especially my ace queen diamonds, I'm just supposed to shove. And, when I do shove in game, I'm also supposed to get called by a lot of worse hands. But let's see like what types of worse hands are supposed to call, and based off of that, see if I made a decent decision. Supposed to shove. What types of heroes are they supposed to make? Okay, so ace queen obviously, but they don't really have. So when you're looking at GTO in spots like this, especially on these river decisions, it's a little bit easier to look at it with these full squares and see these full proportions of everything. But it's not very realistic. Instead, if we click this box, what it does is it shows the actual size of hands that actually get to this spot. So it's going to make this look wildly different. Okay, so now this is a lot harder to see, but it does show us hands that he actually gets to the river with. from a theory point of view. So he has some king 10 combos, and is king 10 with the king of spades. Obviously, that's supposed to call. I do think that this is a legitimate combo that they probably call with. Yeah, I think it's pretty likely they would call with a hand like this. They're supposed to have ace jack here with the ace of spades. Not supposed to call it the jack of spades, just with the ace of spades though, because I'm supposed to use the jack of spades as like my primary bluff card. So that makes sense. So they're supposed to call ace jack with the ace of spades. Do they get to the turn with it when I go 2/3 pot on flop? Yeah, probably. Okay, they probably have ace jack with the ace of spades. Do they find a call with it? Maybe. Same with this king 10. Do they find a call with it? Maybe. I mean, it's like they're some of their best bluff combos. Like if they can choose between calling queen 10 or calling king 10 with the king of spades or ace jack with the ace of spades, these are much better calls than this. So
I'm going to save all of you about 8 minutes of your life at this point. Ryan basically goes through and realizes that there aren't really any good value hands that can call that are worse than his. There aren't really many bluff catchers that can call. And everything that does call is probably just nuts or second nuts, given the exact board texture and the action of the hand. So, yeah. I just gave you 8 minutes of video in, about 40 seconds? You're welcome.
yeah, see, and this is in part why I checked back. I honestly didn't do this combo counting in game. I just kind of thought that while it was hard for them to have that many flushes, they still have more than enough. And really, it's hard for them to have worse hands that want to call. So while I river top 2 pair, and while technically, GTO says rip it in all day, fist pump it off, hey, did great, do that. What a great river card, and also you need to protect everything else. Well, I don't need to do that, so instead I made a very nitty check back, and I saved my stack as I lost to the ace 4 of spades. I hope you enjoyed today's video. This was a very, very, very fun tournament that I unfortunately did not get to play enough of. I do have some more hands coming from this tournament, so if you're looking forward to more high stakes live tournament action, this is definitely the spot that you want to check on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and healthy out there, and best of luck at the tables. See ya!